Hi, 7th grade. This video is designed to help you to take notes on Section 3, cell division in your science textbooks. The reason that I made this video is to help you, even if you feel like you're starting to understand this whole note-taking thing, to develop some new strategies for how to locate that extra important information, and also to think outside the box a little bit on how you can organize that information in your notes to make it more accessible to your brain. Remember, our brains are very visual structures, and they love patterns. If you can help your brain to find those patterns, it's going to learn and remember things more quickly. So go ahead and open up your books to page 61. That's the beginning of this section. You'll notice that I have my screen set up with a copy of your textbook on the right and a pad of paper on the left where I will be typing out my notes. The very first thing we need to put is the section label. So this is Chapter 2, Section 3, 2.3. The title of this section is Cell Division. Once you have that written down in your notebooks, please go ahead and read that first page. It's short, it's just 2 paragraphs. You can pause the video as you're reading, and then when you're done, click on pause. Now you may have noticed as you were reading those first few paragraphs that the majority of the information is setting the stage. It's giving you visuals, pictures, that you can use to latch on to the content that we are heading into. Usually the book is going to do this. It's going to start with a story or a visualization. Oftentimes that information isn't really noteworthy. It's just getting you thinking. In this case, there are a few things that you might want to jot down. For instance, that this single cell is going to form 2 cells and those 2 cells are going to form 4. But for all intents and purposes, I'm going to say that we can go without that information for today. This is a long section. We're going to hit everything that's said there in just another moment. Go ahead and pause the video and read the next section. The section is called the cell cycle. Because we're starting a new section heading, the first thing we need to do is type that into our notes, or write in your case. Having the section headings in our notes helps us when we're taking our quiz and also when we're using our notes to study for the test to know where in the book we're pulling this information from, or we were pulling this information from. In the case of the cell cycle, there are a few important pieces of information. For instance, the book tells us that when cells divide, all of the structures, including the cell organelles we learned in Chapter 1, the cell membrane, the nucleus, and mitochondria, etc., have to be present in both cells. In other words, you can't have one cell that has all the organelles and a second cell that has none. They both need to have everything necessary to survive. Pardon my clunky typing here. The next thing I noticed that's noteworthy is a vocab word. The vocab words are going to always be in bold font to draw your eye to them. The textbook authors use bold font on purpose to help you to see what's really important in a text. In this case, the definition for the word is found before the bold text in the book. So a cell cycle is the regular sequence of growth and division that cells undergo. In your notes, you're going to have to make sure that that is a highlighted term. That'll again draw the eye to it when you come back to your notes to study. The last thing I noticed, it's at the very end of this section, is that the book tells us that the cell cycle is divided into 3 stages. And I can notice already in the next section that that's going to be important. I see the stage 1 is my next bold heading section. Once you're finished with that, you can go ahead and type the next section heading into write the next section heading in your notebook and read it through quickly. Pause the video when you are finished reading, push play. All right, the first thing I noticed in this small section called Stage 1 Interphase is a vocab term. Interphase is the period before cell division occurs. I also see a list in this section. Even though it's short, there's a lot of bold. That tells me that this information is important. Whenever I see a list, I'm going to write it as such in my notes. So during interphase, 3 things happen. The first thing that happens is that cells, use my grammar here, cells grow to mature size. After that, they copy their DNA. And then thirdly, they prepare to divide into 2 cells. That is the end of stage 1 interphase. Go ahead and pause the video, read the next section called growth. When you're done, unpause. In the section called growth, we learned that the cell is going to double in size and it's going to produce structures needed to carry out functions. So during interphase, we see lots of growth taking place. The cell is doubling and it's making these new structures. The book gave a couple of examples of these structures. It's not a bad idea to put examples in your notes. Whenever you see EX, that's my way of abbreviating example. So a few examples are that the cell is going to enlarge the endoplasmic reticulum, which we know from chapter 1 we can abbreviate maybe as ER. And it's also going to make new ribosomes. Just a few suggestions or examples of how this growth is taking place. Another important thing in this section is that we learn the mitochondria and the chloroplast, the energy-making parts of the cells, are going to copy themselves. It's important for cells to have access to energy, so it makes sense that they would protect and double those structures first. When you're finished with that, go ahead and read the next section heading called DNA replication. When you're finished, unpause the video and we will continue. Again, the first thing that jumps out at me when I look at this section called DNA replication is that we have a vocab word. When I write my vocab words on my computer, I don't have the ability to highlight easily, but in your notebook, remember that all those vocab words should be highlighted. The definition for replication in the book is the part of interphase where the cell makes a copy of its DNA. We'll add in its nucleus, the place where that happens. Now this is a really important process. We learned how important DNA was when we talked about the inside of the cell in section 1. Each of the daughter cells, the products after cell division, have to have a complete set of DNA to survive. This section also talked about how the cell has 2 identical sets of DNA at the end of replication. In other words, every time that this duplication happens, this replication happens, we're ending up with exactly the same product. I think that's probably important enough to put into our notes. And that is the section on DNA replication. Go ahead and turn the page and read the very short section called Preparation for Division. When you're done, unpause the video. The section is short and there's not a ton that's noteworthy in there, but we can summarize what it says, perhaps by reminding ourselves that cells are going to produce structures that they will use to divide during the rest of the cell cycle. So the preparation for division means that they're making the structures they're going to need to use during division. How can we summarize that? How about cells make cells make structures that they will need during division. Remember that it is always okay to summarize in your notes. You don't have to write things word for word. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't. Your brain gets more out of a reading activity like this when you're challenging yourself to restate what you've read. When you're finished typing or writing that out, go ahead and read the next section called Stage 2 Mitosis. When you're finished reading, unpause the video and we will continue. All right, the first thing that I see in this section is a vocab word. Mitosis is the stage during which the cell's nucleus divides into two separate nuclei. Nuclei is just the singular version, or the plural version, of nucleus. So two nucleuses are a nuclei. Other important information in this section. Hopefully you're starting to pick up on what some of this information is as you're reading, and then the video is just a fact check for you to make sure that you're on the right track. I notice that there is some bold text right after the definition for mitosis. I'm not going to copy it word for word because, again, I'm always looking to restate to help my brain out. So let's see, how can we say this? One copy of DNA distributed to each daughter cell during mitosis. So there's that bold section, or that bold text within the section. I notice next, at the beginning of the next paragraph, that we have another list. Scientists divide mitosis into 4 parts or phases. Let's make sure that we have those phases in our notebook. So divided into 4 phases. Mitosis is divided into 4 phases. The first phase is called prophase. That's what our book says. The second phase is called metaphase. Third phase is anaphase. If I'm going too fast, remember you can always pause the video, catch up, and then push play when you are ready to continue. So we have 4 phases there in mitosis. The last 2 things I notice are more bolded terms, more vocab words. A chromosome is a doubled rod, or doubled rods, of condensed chromatin. A chromatid is simply the name for one of these strands of chromosome. And that gets us through the end of stage 2 mitosis. Now in your book, the next 2 pages are a spread. They have some really important information about each of these phases in mitosis. I'm going to pause the video, or ask you to pause the video, and I'd like you to copy all of the information that you see. Remember that you don't have to copy word for word, but summarize what is interphase. Summarize what is prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase, cytokinesis. If you're a really visual person and you want to summarize and also draw the pictures that are next to each of those summaries, go ahead and do that. This is probably going to take up a decent amount of a piece of paper, perhaps a half of one of your sheets in your notebook, but I would like you to have this information in there so that you are able to use it when we get to our quiz and able to use it as a study guide when we're ready or getting ready for our test. At this point, I'm going to actually stop this video and start a second one. Use this time, please, to finish putting the information from exploring the cell cycle into your notebook.